Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending on where you are logging in. My name is Yuri Savershel, and I'm looking forward to spend the next 20 minutes, half an hour with you. And today's topic is how to brand a coffee shop. So for those of you who don't know us, Creative Supply is a branding and experience design agency based out of Zurich, and we do a lot of work in the hospitality industry, anything from a small coffee shop all the way to the branding of neighborhoods or hotel chain across Europe and beyond. The topic for today is coffee shops, and the way I've structured today's presentation is simple. I'd like to speak quickly a bit about the evolution of coffee shops with a few thoughts about new concepts coming up and the challenges of today. And after that, I picked for you a small project we have done in Switzerland, actually, branding a coffee shop in a very traditional place in Murten, Mora. And after that, as always, for those who know our webinar, I'll keep time at the end to answer any questions you might have, and hopefully you guys have many. So when we look at coffee shop and what is the coffee shop, etc., I like this definition of actually the UNESCO entry on Viennese coffee house culture. Coffee house is a place in which time and space are consumed, but only coffee is listed on the bill. So coffee house, coffee shop is often associated to Vienna, but if we look at the reality of it, it is actually a Turkish, more precisely an Istanbul invention or innovation at the time. And fundamentally, the true concept of coffee shop hasn't changed that much. It was about bringing people together, socialize, exchange ideas, mainly men at the time, and having coffee, nargile as well at the time. So fundamentally, those things haven't changed that much. However, a lot of things have evolved. If we look at the cycles of coffee shop or brand concepts, and I wanted to do a non-existing overview of this, but I think it still makes it interesting in the sense that every coffee shop or every brand has its time, and there's a cycle for all of those things, right? For example, if you think about, Starbucks, to start with the most known one, it's actually a concept that is dating back from the 70s that has reached a complete maturity in most of the markets out there. And there's concepts that most of us have forgotten, like Gloria Jean's coffee, for example. And at the same time, now we see the newcomer, the German audience would know about Lap, the UK audience would know about Blank Street, a coffee shop that make things a little bit different. And that has a lot to do with the challenges we observe at the moment. And I will comment this in a minute. Those of you in the coffee business know this by heart. We typically speak about the different waves of coffee. The first wave is basically coffee is a commodity. It's something you drink at home. It's a cheap thing. And suddenly in the roughly 60s, 70s, branded chains came, typically Starbucks, and they kind of make it a third place. And for a very long time, this whole idea of the third place was the branding case study in coffee shops, saying, oh, this is something new between the home and between the office, you have the third place. And that's kind of the second wave that runs until, 90s, early 2000s. And then we see the beginning of what we call the third wave. These are typically smaller coffee shops focused on specialty coffees, so very high level of roasting grades, transparency about the suppliers, higher price point as well, and something more for connoisseurs. Is there fourth waves? Well, depending on who you ask in the industry, nobody agrees yet exactly on that. But I think that should be the focus for us today. What's coming next? When we look about what's coming next, I think it's interesting to understand what are the current challenges that we see in the coffee shop business. And I'm taking here a, let's say, Western Asian view, typically urban developed market, right? So costs are up, be raw material, be coffee, milk, it's going up. Rent is going up. Staffing cost is going up. Competition is up. Today, local chains are competing with specialty coffees that are now also competing with every shopping mall or shops or retail brand now has its coffee shop. You go to the Cadillac showroom, there's a coffee shop. You go to Ralph Lauren, they have a coffee shop. So it makes it a very, very competitive environment. Obviously, the gross margin are higher than in a restaurant, because you have much higher margin on a pure coffee, but you need to sell a lot of them to make money out. And finally, and that's the thing that arguably interests Creative Supply the most, because that's where we can have a huge impact on it, is differentiation is down. And what I mean by that is that the playbook of a cool coffee shop is overplayed by everybody. And by that, I mean, the minimalist Scandinavian interior, the La Marzocco machine, the indie playlist, the little goodie you can buy. And it used to be cool and new, a bit like concept stores in the early 2000s. But right now, like we've seen it. And then you've seen them on Instagram, you've seen them on TikTok, and it's very, very, very hard to actually differentiate your coffee shop. Or at least that's one of the challenges we see today. Everybody knows you need to get influencer, you need to get involved with all of that, etc., etc. So moving on, where do we go from there? So I cannot spill all our secrets, but I can share with you a couple of key ideas, which might sound a bit generic, but if you think about how to do it, that's when you build the difference. If you look at cost, obviously you need to optimize your cost. I think that's a bit of an obvious one, but there's different ways to do this, and typically sharing resources can be one of them. What do you do with your space when you're not using it? Do you share resources in purchasing, etc.? I think there's a lot of things that can be done for independent as well as for chain. Revenue streams. What's interesting with coffee is that it's fundamentally not about coffee. It's about culture. It has always been since Istanbul time. It's about bringing people together. And that creates a platform. It's people that live nearby, maybe for some of them, that spend time together, that have shared interests, potentially similar demographic profile. You can tap into this. And what are ways to build on revenue stream connected to this, on top of, selling beans or selling goodies, of course. Competition is up, which means that loyalty needs to be built in a much more systematic way. Honestly, in Europe, what we see at best is the 10 stamps, get the 10 coffee for free. It's nice, it's cute, but it's not fundamentally building loyalty or at least repeat purchase. I would definitely look at Asia that has managed to digitalize most of this offer, where you can suddenly you can yield certain drinks based on certain hours. You can push certain drinks based on geolocalization. There's a lot of things that are possible to do at the digital level, and that do make a lot of sense once you have, obviously, a chain. Obviously, you're not going to put up a whole digital system if you have a one coffee shop, but you could. And finally, differentiation down. Well, it's about creating a distinctive concept, which, to be honest, is harder and harder every day because the notion of concept has become very much widespread. The simple fact that today in that call, we probably have 5 to 10 of our competitors that just joined that call means that the information is getting shared and there's a level playing field which becomes pretty much the same for everybody. So then the difference, or the devil, is in the details, and that's where the concept is actually gonna stand out. Obviously, distinctive product, distinctive experience, and finding ways to protect those from copycat. But that, I think, is the topic of our next webinar. So the case study I'd like to share with you is something a bit unexpected because we are not in downtown Paris, Zurich, or Tokyo. We are in a place that typically doesn't have coffee shops. And that's why I thought it was interesting to share this with you. We are in the little town of Murten, Mora. It's a bilingual town in Switzerland, which is a very pretty, traditional, extremely well-preserved medieval town. It's highly touristic, and people come there to visit the castle, spend one night or two, go see the lake around it. So you typically have a type of a clientele that is on the, let's say, 40 plus. It's a cute town. You can imagine the typical bakery and the typical tea room, and actually no good coffee. And we worked together with the owner of several hotels, actually, in Murten, who had that one building. And that one building, he converted the top rooms into, bedrooms, apartments. But the whole ground floor, the idea was to make a coffee shop out of it, to serve the breakfast for the guests of all his different hotels in Murten. So we centralized the breakfast in one place, talking about sharing resources, and to actually have a cool coffee shop open every day for locals and tourists alike. And for locals was very important because the idea was not to make it another tourist product. So the starting point, as you can see, is old building that used to be called the Stadthaus. And when we asked why, actually nobody exactly knew, just because it's across the Stadthaus, so it didn't make much sense. And inside there was an Asian Chinese restaurant, which was not that much working, but which was basically this typical Asian restaurant with kind of a low budget, I'd say. So it wasn't attractive from a menu, an offering, and I would argue a little bit out of place from Murten. when we start to work on this project, we did the things that we prefer to do at Creative Supply, which is dig into the research and the archive of a place. And that's something amazing to do in Europe, sometimes harder in different regions of the world. And here we found an old map of Murten from actually 19th century that identified that one building where we have the coffee shop as the Kornhaus. So that means it's a place where you basically collect the grains for the winter. And so the name was a given. So we didn't have to call this Stadthaus or anything else. We just went back to the original name of the place. But when it came to then building up the identity, we took a turn that was very unexpected because we decided to push the brand almost like as a cool urban brand. To be fair with you, I personally was unsure about going such an extreme because I would have picked a more conservative way to look at it by being closer to the image that tourists have of Mora and Murten. But Gilles, the owner, was very clear about this, that Murten needs a place that's younger, that's cooler, because there's a lot of people who actually live around and would love to have a cool place. So we followed a lot his intuition on that one to basically shape the brand on this, because no market research or market data would give you that insight, right? Otherwise, you would just see tourist numbers. And as you can see, a couple of comments on what we did there. Kornhaus is the name, but then we invented that the coffee is going to be called Morabica, which is a word play on Mora, the French name of the city. And then Morabica, Arabica, becomes the signature product. And then there's a lot of wordplay that we built around, being in Murten, all the way from a tote bag that says downtown Murten. More on this later. So just to show you a little bit how the whole things turned out. We're in the middle of a medieval town. So from an outside point of view, there's pretty much nothing you can do because of authorization. Everything is listed. So the only thing we can do is put the logo on the facade, change the chairs, have a nice sign in orange that stands out, and that's pretty much it. You can see that the facade has been lifted a lot and much cleaned up compared to what it was in the past. And then you have the inside of the place. The interior design and the branding kind of worked in parallel instead of branding leading the interior design, which is always a tricky thing in those types of projects. But we are allowed to kind of find a way together where we respect the existing building, the old stones. We bring an interior that is blend enough that it can work with different types of age and people, because that's one of the goals. And then we started to really bring the energy throughout the branding. And as you'll see, the people, this is actually the staff of the Kornhaus posing for us. We brought that urban energy. And that thing is really, you don't feel like you are Murten here. And I think we've heard so much about all those projects which are about being inspired by the neighborhood, getting the energy of the neighborhood inside the coffee or the restaurant or the hotel. And I think here we did something not like that. We kind of invented the cool version of Murten that the locals would like to have, which is a very different way to look at it. So you can imagine, it has this kind of saggy t-shirt, cap, and very bold lettering. And we speak about made in Murten, so we're proud to be from Murten. And it feels like a cool urban brand, and it doesn't feel like a medieval town branding. So that contrast is, I think, where really the brand stands out. Then in terms of, detail, obviously quality is not something you can compromise on. Right, good coffee is it's the level playing field. So that means the La Marzocco machine. That means that the Marzocco machine has the custom colors to match the overall branding. And you can see here, the custom coffee bag with the Morabica, which becomes actually a cool product for social media, etc. And all the branded, takeaway cups, etc. That's an obvious one. At the menu level, I think we focused together with the owner on building up a menu that looks extremely good, is made of a lot of classics, is very easy to do with very small kitchen and blueprint, and has a good margin for all of them. But I think what's interesting with the food is that we really build that parallel between the menu and the food itself, so that you see on the left picture, it's a bit small, but already some nice little pictures of what the menu will be. So it has this exciting thing. It's very Instagrammable. It's very TikTokable. Like you want to even take pictures of the menu. It's not just, it looks like a cool piece of graphic design on it. And each of the menu piece as well has that beauty in it. So again, you want to take your phone out, take a picture. And it was nice to have a couple of years ago. I think today it's is the basics. If you don't even have that as a start, it makes it very, very tricky. And I think that's where we brought more creativity in, because we thought, well, let's develop kind of a line of goodies. So we have the Made in Mora t-shirt, we have the downtown Murten tote bag, which is a bit humorous because obviously you are downtown New York or London, nobody's downtown Murten, but that makes it a fun thing, as well as the coffee and the mug. We sold out the t-shirts in 2 weeks, and we sold them out to locals first, because the locals were just so happy to suddenly have a super cool t-shirt that they could wear that was saying Made in Mora. So I think we struck the right chord addressing the local first. And when I speak about addressing the local, this has gone beyond selling them t-shirts, obviously. We've involved them throughout the entire shoot and launch of the cafe. You know, typically you would have like a model agencies that send you a couple of models, a lot for hotels actually, and you do a couple of shoots, and they kind of all feel very much the same, and everybody look great, etc. And we took a different point of view. We had people from every generation from Murten coming on the photo shoot. So you had the couple of retired, the young couple, the young girl, the guy who is passing by with a skateboard along the street and play along, the friends of the owner, and everybody came the way they are, and they played along. And we have like dozens, if not hundreds of photographies, small videos, bringing the locals together, so that the Kornhaus is first a place for the locals. And you know how it is with those local branding, you always need to get the local first if you want to get the tourists, because then it's not a tourist place, it's a local place. So if I summarize in a nutshell, the idea that we have done there, because it's not a typical coffee shop, first, quality is a key success factor. You know, it's not something you can negotiate or try to cut corners on, doesn't work. 2, the positioning is ultra local, which means you cannot really copy it because there's only one coffee shop in Murten that plays around the Kornhaus. So it makes it more unique and more scarce. And in today's world, the scarcer, the better to stand out. It is a very differentiated visual identity, particularly for Murten, obviously, because it plays with codes which are not the typical design visual codes that we would find in Murten. The retail is contextualized, which means we are not just selling a t-shirt, we're selling a t-shirt that do make sense for the people who live around there, and they also do make sense for the people who visit. And finally, as you've seen, we engaged the community to the max, and that actually allows to build goodwills and loyalty in the long term, because from the beginning you are seen at that place that have a local street cred, so to speak. Okay. So that takes us to the end of this second part, and I wanted to share with you 2 things. The first one is our WhatsApp group called the Brand Shift. It's a group on which we post on a weekly basis, sometimes less, real insights that we discover about branding, about customer experience. And we call it the Brand Shift because things are really changing at the moment, AI being the big culprit here. And trying to understand where brands are moving and how you can build stronger brand tomorrow when everybody can copy you overnight. I think that's the main challenge. And if you found this presentation somewhat interested, and that's my 30 seconds begging here, it would be absolutely fantastic if you guys can share with us your review. I've put here the QR code that you can directly scan with your phone or just our Google page, Creative Supply. And, you know, it takes you just a couple of seconds, but just you sharing your insight gives us the motivation to really continue doing those things actually for free and share a lot of our insights to everybody, including our competitors. And so that would be really, really appreciated if you guys can share that. And now has come the time Q&A. So any comments or questions that you guys have, I'd be happy to take them on, and happy to leave a few seconds for you guys to gather your thoughts upon the chat at the same time. Okay, so we start with a critical question. I like it. Albert tells us, it's nice, but isn't just an order drawing board concept from an advertising agency? Well, I think you have fundamentals that everybody understands, and you have to play with them. I think, as I mentioned at the beginning, the difference is really going to be in the detail, and I would say the intention behind a design. I think it's very easy today to develop a good-looking coffee shop, etc. But having the ability to understand what's happening in that place, what would resonate with the people, and how can we tap into this to do something that's not just selling them more stuff, but also being part of the place that has a lot of value. Is it the same drawing board as an advertising agency? I don't know. I wouldn't be able to tell you. We actually don't do advertising. Do you know? Okay, there's a question here from Eliska. Hello, Eliska. Nice to see you here. Do you know any other examples of shared space between a coffee shop and other institutions? Well, I think for this we have to look outside of Europe. Europe real estate owners have very often a traditional view on their space, and that's my space, that's your space, and everybody does their own thing. I think as soon as we go east, we start to see a flower shop that basically creates a hole between a coffee shop. You can suddenly see a coffee shop that collaborates with a bar nearby so they can have an alcohol coffee offering in the evening. And I think the more we go east, the more we start to see that flexibility in concept. The customers accept it as well. So I would definitely look at Asia. I think Korea and China would probably be the leader when it comes to such a concept. So I keep on with the question. Another question from Albert, which I think is a great question. If you withdraw as an agency, who will create the concept? Well, to be honest, I think as an agency, if you build up a concept, you must be able to withdraw at some point. And if you are not, that means that you haven't created a concept that can truly be delivered by the owner. So it doesn't mean you don't need ongoing help for things with an agency, but the ownership of the concept down the line, not just from a legal point of view, but from an emotional point of view, has to be with the owner and or operator, depending on the setup. And I think in the case of the Kornhaus, the owner himself is showing up around the village now with his Kornhaus made in Mora t-shirt. He's proud of it. He's embracing it. He's the number one ambassador of this. So we've built something that can work with the team on site. And I think we see a lot of companies that develop really cool concepts on paper, on slides. They are super shiny, but nobody can deliver them. And I think it's a typical beginner mistake, actually, to do something really cool that you saw somewhere, but misreading the place, the owner, the operator, and maybe the customers. So, I mean, this concept can live without an agency. Should, especially a coffee shop in Murten. We're not talking about a real estate development for 3,000 people here. So I see something... Hope I answered your question, Albert. So Ju is saying, hi from Amsterdam. For cities like Geneva, do you have any idea or recommendation to differentiate yourself in such a competitive market? Okay, I'll pick Geneva because actually I grew up there, so I know the market very well. Geneva is a tricky market because you have a weekend, weekday type of dynamic. So you need to build it in it. I think what's interesting in Geneva is that it's very centric on a couple of industries. You know, you think commodity trading, oil, banking, obviously, private wealth management, maybe a bit consultings, watchmakings. It's a very business city, actually, despite the official tourism campaign that position it as a leisure city. But the reality of it, it's a very business city. I would try to tap into this, but not in a cheesy manner, because there's a lot of people with shared interest. And even as a coffee shop, you can be a place that connects people. You build what ChatGPT calls a competitive moat. I learned that word with the ChatGPT. Basically, something that protects your business beyond your product or your location. Probably one way to look at it, but would deserve more thinking. There's some new question here. Hi, these days, the themes quality coffee shop is increasing. If you are launching a new business involving coffee, do you think traditional coffee and the quality coffee concept can coexist, or are they incompatible? My opinion on it is that those terms are jargon of the industry, and I don't think that the mass customer base you need with a coffee shop is that much interest in it or even knowledgeable about the difference. And frankly, if your only differentiator is semantic, you know, basically calling it something else, I think it's tricky. And we've seen this with specialty coffee shop. Starbucks has now launched its own specialty coffee brand, right? It's called Reserve by Starbucks. So they are going that direction as well. So I think it's not about that. I think the coffee shop of tomorrow has to be ingrained much more in today's culture, more than playing wordplay around the types of coffee, if that helps. There are so many coffee concepts in big cities. Don't you think that people will get bored of it? Or do you think that the coffee market will keep booming? I think it's a general question. It depends of where you look at. We see many markets actually where the consumption of coffee is stabilizing or decreasing because people have other options. They do it at home, economical concerns, but also alternative. Matcha is a bit like up and down depending on the years. At the moment, it's a trendy thing. But overall, I think coffee as a base product has a 600 years track record. So I wouldn't worry too much about the capacity of coffee shop to sell coffee. I think the pressure on margin is forcing coffee shop to do more. And maybe the coffee shop itself is not the only revenue point, as I discussed below, but the coffee shop serves as a platform in which other business can be born. And I think there's very different ways to do this. So I would look at options like that, because if you're stuck just with the own P&L of your 30 square meter coffee shop somewhere, unless you're in a super high traffic area with a low rent, there's a cap anyway that you're going to have. So I guess I have answered your question, Jules. Let's see if we have other questions to finish up. Okay, I get it. Yeah, sorry, I didn't see them coming at the same time. So questions is about the goodies. How important is it to have goodies, sell cookies alongside the coffee? Well, think about it. It's an incremental revenue story. It's harder to get people in your shop than to sell them an extra cookie. It's as basic as this. So if you can build up a system where you can have high margin things like a cookie that you can sell to people who are already there, it's a no-brainer. So I think the increasing the average check per customer is where profit is made, aside getting the people into the shop. So I think it's very important, for sure. Cyril is asking us, would a differentiated coffee shop in Montreux with a not so young population compare to Murten? Potentially. I mean, Montreux is a bit more of we've done some hotel project there, as some of you know, the Mona project, which is a hotel. Montreux is more seasonal than Murten because, it's a peak summer seasons, but the winter is very, very quiet. I mean, very quieter. But the coffee shop is normally all year round operation. So January, February, and March is going to be difficult. And then July and August are not top coffee shop months, cold beverage, etc. I would look at it differently, I think, for Montreux. I would develop something different for Montreux. I would not try to do what we've done at the Kornhaus at that level, if that helps. Hello, you're living in Shanghai and just came back from Ho Chi Minh City. Okay, I know both cities. Huge coffee crowd. Do you think business will need something else than being Instagram, TikTokable in order to survive in a place like this? Or we kind of need to stay at this area first? Of course, it's going to need something else. It's completely saturated. And especially if you look at Asia and markets, actually Ho Chi Minh has a super cool coffee shop scene. Everybody knows the playbook now. So we'll have to go one level up. I'm dreaming to do a coffee shop that's not even on Google Maps, that doesn't even have an Instagram page, that doesn't have a TikTok page. That's just a place that people who know and tell their other friend, and there's a QR code that allows you to get special deal, but only if you've been there once, for example. I think that's where we are going. Scarcity in concept, at least for independent concept. For chains, it's a bit different, and they also have a different agenda because many of them are working on a franchise model. So I think where you make the money is different, but if you're owner operator, I think there's benefit in pushing it. But obviously, someone has to do it. Anna, not a question but a comment, but I'd like to share this. The coffee shop of tomorrow will be about the social link and the usefulness it has for its community. And I couldn't agree more, especially in places like Europe or places like Murten, where you cannot just have a capitalist view on it, but you actually need to play your part. So yeah, thanks a lot for this comment, Anna. What are good high-margin merch product goodies beyond the common cups, t-shirt, tote bags? Well, Teresa, I'm going to answer your excellent question with another question saying, what is your concept? Because I think if you build up a concept that is, I'm just inventing, all about technology and new people meeting about technology, etc., certainly the goodies you could have could work with this. But if you are about all coffee and scent and Silk Roads and the coffee, you would have different goodies. And I think that's the point. Having that template of saying, the tote bag and the t-shirt that I showed you for Murten, everybody has them. They're nice to have, but this is not the thing that are really going to take your coffee shop so much further. So I would really align the retail offering to the core of the concept in a way that your competitor cannot, if that makes sense. What do you think of QR code menus? I personally love them because I like, especially for coffee shop, because I love the fact that once you have people in their phone, you can control that environment. You can say, hey, there's a sales now. Hey, you can order this. Hey, if you order this, we can send you this on that. Today, most QR code, you go on it and then it opens a PDF. So I think if it's to open a PDF, just give a paper menu. It's nicer as an experience. But if you build up a real digital experience in the menu, I think this is really exciting what you can do. You can get people to sign up on your newsletter now. You can get them to follow your Instagram. You can get them to tell you what they liked about the coffee. You can offer them secret deal. There's hundreds of things you can do. There's no limit. Digitally, you're not limited by a physical space. So the QR code is amazing in what it allows digitally as a simple tool alone, as an alternative, as a PDF link compared to the menu. Zero value. Give a physical menu. It's cooler. All right, guys. I don't know if there's still more questions, I just put the link for any of you who wants to help us gain visibility on Google. So please please don't hesitate to give us a review. This really motivates the team. And also I can tell my social media manager that I'm doing my job. Okay. Any last questions? Cool. All right, guys. Well, once again, thanks a lot for joining our webinar. The next one, I don't have the date in mind, but will be about real estate branding, or how you build brands for projects that are not born yet. So hopefully I'll see some of you. And if you haven't, we'll make sure that we send you the email anyway. And in any case, I wish you a wonderful end of the week, and see you very soon, hopefully in our next webinar, or who knows, maybe even in real life. Thank you very much, everybody, and bye-bye.